Have you ever wondered why the one who said they loved you ended up hurting you the most? That question echoes in the moments of silence. You gave your trust, your patience, your whole heart, and in the end, everything fell apart. It's easy to think it was punishment that you chose the wrong person, or that God turned away for a moment. But what if that's not the case? What if that relationship wasn't sent to destroy you, but to help you discover who you truly are? God's lessons rarely arrive gently. They come through contrast. They appear in the form of people who awaken you so that you learn to set boundaries, to value yourself, and to reclaim your own voice. You prayed for love, but life showed you everything that was not love. You sought peace, and God sent chaos so you could learn to create peace within yourself. Carl Jung once said, "There is no awakening without pain." Pain is not cruelty. It is clarity. It shows you what is real and what never was. It strips away illusion so truth can breathe. Perhaps that's why God allowed you to meet that person, not because you needed to suffer, but because you were ready to grow. You were not cursed for loving the wrong person. You were chosen to see yourself more clearly. You are not breaking. You are being remade. Every wound is a doorway. Every tear is a sign that something within you is awakening. You were never meant to remain in the dark. You were born to rise from it. That is the sacred paradox. God's lessons seldom appear in the form we expect. They come disguised as loss, betrayal, deafening silence, and the people who dismantle everything you thought you knew about love and safety. But if you look deeper, you'll see that the breaking was never destruction, it was preparation. We often mistake suffering for punishment. In truth, it is purification. Pain burns away illusion, stripping off the masks that both we and others wear, not just to hide, but to survive. When someone wounds you to your core, they expose the cracks within you, the parts still dependent on approval, the fear of abandonment, the belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. Carl Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And perhaps God teaches in the same way, not through rewards, but through opposites. Because light only gains meaning after we have known darkness. You cannot recognize truth without first being deceived. You cannot understand freedom without having felt control. You cannot know genuine kindness without having been used. In the realm of the soul, nothing is random. The great encounters of life, love, friendship, or tragedy are divine appointments, moments where two souls cross paths to mirror, to trigger, and to awaken each other. The narcissist doesn't enter your life merely to hurt you. They appear to reveal the parts within you that remain unhealed. Jung called this the shadow mirroring phenomenon. When two people meet, their unconscious minds recognize each other long before their intellect does. One carries the light, the other the shadow. And when they collide, the shadow awakens. You, the empath, carry the energy of light. You see potential in others, believe in change, and possess a deep desire to connect, to be understood, to love genuinely. They, the narcissist, are souls disconnected from their true essence. Having lost touch with authentic love, they survive by feeding on the energy of others. They need you to feel alive. And unconsciously, you need them to learn that love cannot mean endless self-sacrifice. This meeting is like two opposing poles of a magnet drawn together by primal force. You feel irresistibly pulled toward them, not by logic, but by the soul. They make you feel special, as if the universe itself has written a fated love story between you. But in truth, it isn't love, it's reflection. They see in you what they long to possess: purity, kindness, unconditional love. And you, in turn, see in them what you've lost: confidence, assertiveness, power. The relationship begins as a promise, but is in fact a spiritual initiation, a trial by fire for your soul. Jung said, "We do not meet others by accident. They are carriers of our unconscious selves." That is the essence of this encounter. The narcissist isn't just an ex-lover. They are a mirror reflecting your inner shadow, the part still craving validation, still believing you must prove your worth to deserve love. They did not create the wound. They merely touched it, and that touch was your awakening. Think about it. Haven't you long carried a vague fear of being left behind, of not being enough, of needing to please others to be loved? Those patterns didn't begin with them. They came from your past, from years of learning to earn love by compliance. The narcissist merely replayed that old script, but this time at full volume, so you could no longer ignore it. God used them as a magnifying mirror. Through them, you finally saw yourself, not the idealized image, but the inner child still seeking unconditional love through endurance. And only by seeing that child could you begin to heal. One of the universe's most brutal yet profound truths is this: the soul does not mature in comfort, it matures through contrast. You cannot learn self-love without being devalued. You cannot learn boundaries without being violated. You cannot learn release without first clinging too tightly. The narcissist is sent as a harsh teacher. They don't teach through words, but through pain. And that is why you were chosen. Not because you are weak, but because you can see beyond the surface. Many meet narcissists and become bitter, closed, or repeat the same pattern. But you are different. You were broken. Yet instead of becoming like them, you sought understanding. You asked why. You searched for meaning. And that search, not victory, is the true awakening. The difference between those who are destroyed and those who are reborn lies in how they interpret pain. When you stop asking, why did they do this to me, and start asking, what am I meant to learn from this, you shift from the physical plane to the spiritual. That is the quantum leap of consciousness. From Jung's perspective, the narcissist and the empath are two halves of an incomplete soul. The narcissist represents the inflated ego, the empath, the dissolved one. One is too rigid, the other too porous. One craves power, the other fears hurt. When these two poles meet, the universe creates the perfect alchemy, a chance for both to find balance. But rarely does the narcissist learn. They run from pain, deny accountability, and live in illusion. You, however, dare to face it. You see, you feel, you evolve. If you notice, this process doesn't just transform the way you love, it restructures your psyche. You begin to discern between compassion and self-destruction. You learn that helping doesn't mean rescuing. You realize forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. And above all, you understand that loving others can never be an excuse to abandon yourself. Pain, in a way, is the soul's refining fire. It burns away all that is false, leaving only the essence of who you truly are. God doesn't use suffering to humiliate us, but to shape us. And often, those chosen for this journey are the soft-hearted ones, those who appear fragile but rise the strongest after being broken. There are moments in life when God doesn't calm the storm, He lets you walk through it, because only then do you learn how to stand in the wind. You may have prayed for Him to take that person away, to end the toxic bond, or to change them. But God never violates free will. Instead, He watches you to see who you become amid the chaos. Will you repeat the lesson or turn the page? Every encounter with a narcissist is a collision between light and shadow, truth and illusion, the awakened soul and the fearful ego. In that collision, what matters is not whether you win or lose, but whether you awaken. When you realize you cannot control them, you learn to master yourself. When you stop begging to be loved, you begin to love yourself. And when you stop seeking peace from others, you finally find it within. That is the sacred paradox. God uses pain to bring you back home. He doesn't want you to close your heart. He wants you to learn where and how to open it. Not everyone deserves the loving energy you carry. Not every soul is at the same stage of evolution. The narcissist comes to show you the part of yourself that still places love above self-respect. They are not the destined one, they are the awakening one. Often, after such a relationship ends, we feel empty, lost, even angry with God. Yet that is the most sacred moment, because it's where He begins to speak to you. not through others, but through silence, through tears, through loneliness, through each painful breath. It is there in that stillness that the soul rekindles the flame of meaning. You begin to understand, I am not being destroyed, I am being reborn. Pain, once you dare to face it, ceases to be an enemy. It becomes a teacher. And once the lesson is learned, it no longer needs to repeat itself. You stop being drawn to relationships that make you small, because your soul now understands true love never asks you to abandon yourself. Then you begin to look back and realize that God never left. He was there in every collapse, in every act of forgiveness, in every trembling step you took to rise again. He didn't save you from the storm because he knew you would learn to walk through it. And when you emerge, soaked and exhausted, yet still standing, you understand the storm was never sent to destroy you, but to show you that you could survive it. Have you noticed that major turning points in life rarely come from something new, but from something old that no longer works? That relationship, that job, that way of living, all once felt safe. But one day, they no longer fit. And when you tried to cling, to resist, to hold on, God began to send signals. First a quiet unease, then small conflicts, and finally a great breaking. Not because he wanted you to suffer, but because without that quake, you would never awaken. Pain, within the architecture of the soul, is the catalyst of evolution. It marks the beginning of every rebirth. When we lose what we once thought we couldn't live without, the soul is given the chance to reorganize itself. We begin again learning how to love, how to trust, how to live. And though it's hard to admit, most of our growth doesn't come from happiness, but from heartbreak. Think back to the first time you were betrayed. Your chest felt crushed, your trust shattered, and you asked, how could they do this to me? But once you healed, you were no longer naive. You learned to observe behavior instead of just listening to words. You learned to set boundaries. You realized love doesn't mean blindness. And if you're honest, you'll see that very pain made you deeper, quieter, but wiser. God uses experiences like these to sculpt the soul, not cruelly, but like a master craftsman. He chisels away illusions, arrogance, and false beliefs you unconsciously carried. Every cut of pain is a stroke toward truth. He doesn't take away your capacity to love, he takes away your dependency. He doesn't remove your kindness, he refines it from naivete. He doesn't strip your softness, he strengthens it so it can no longer be exploited. In Jungian depth psychology, this is the nigredo stage, the phase of dissolution. The soul is pulled into darkness to confront the parts it once denied. It's the time when old structures collapse. Beliefs, self-image, even your concept of love. You feel yourself falling into a void where everything that once defined you no longer exists. The empath, at this point, often panics. They try to fix, to understand, to hold on to something solid, but the more they resist, the deeper they sink. Because God's lesson is not about control, but surrender. That's why so many people say, I lost everything, but I found myself. Only when you've been stripped bare do you see what truly remains, and what remains is your soul. The theologian Richard Rohr once wrote, the human soul only learns through great love or great suffering. And for empaths, these two often come at once in the same person. The one they love the most becomes the one who hurt them the deepest, yet even that is not meaningless. That love, even shattered, opens a new level of consciousness. If you look closely, you'll see that those who have survived love with a narcissist are profoundly transformed. They no longer trust easily, but they see clearly. They speak less, but every word carries weight. They no longer seek love to fill a void, but to share a journey. They no longer fear solitude, because they've learned that solitude doesn't kill, it teaches self-love. In truth, God never wanted you to close your heart. He wanted you to learn to love with wisdom, to love without losing yourself, to forgive without allowing the wound to repeat, to be compassionate yet boundaried. That is mature kindness love, refined by the fire of awareness. Think back to those nights when you cried until your soul felt like it was dissolving. Now, You can see you're still here. You survived what you once thought would destroy you. And somewhere in that cold wind, you began to believe in something greater than yourself, not religion, but a sacred order in which everything happens for a reason. God doesn't need you to be strong right away. He only asks you to be honest about your fear, your wounds, your desires. That honesty itself is the doorway to awakening. When you stop pretending that everything is fine, healing finally begins. In every journey through pain, there comes a turning point when tears no longer represent despair, but surrender. Not surrender to another person, but to truth itself. You stop resisting what is, stop trying to explain why they did what they did, and begin to ask, what is this here to teach me? In that moment, your soul enters the albedo phase, the stage of purification. That is the sacred paradox. God uses pain to bring you back. He doesn't want you to close your heart. He wants you to learn how to open it in the right place. Not everyone is worthy of your loving energy. Not every soul is at the same stage of evolution. The narcissist arrives to show you where, within yourself, you still place love above self-respect. They are not the destined one. They are the awakener. Often, after such a relationship ends, we feel empty, directionless, and angry with God. But that is the most sacred moment, because it is where He begins to speak to you. Not through other people, but through silence, through tears, through loneliness, through each painful breath. It is there in that quiet that the soul rekindles the flame of meaning. You begin to understand, I am not being destroyed, I am being reborn. Pain, when you dare to face it, ceases to be an enemy. It becomes a teacher. And once the lesson is learned, it no longer needs to repeat. You are no longer drawn to relationships that make you small, because your soul has understood true love never demands that you abandon yourself. Then you begin to look back and realize that God never left. He was present in every collapse, in every act of forgiveness, in every time you chose to rise, even while your heart still trembled. He did not spare you from the storm, because He knew you would learn to walk through it. And when you emerged drenched, exhausted, yet still standing, you understand the storm did not come to destroy you, but to show you that you could survive it. Do you see it? Major upheavals in life rarely begin with something new. They begin when the old no longer works. That relationship, that job, that way of living they once felt safe. Then one day, they no longer fit. And precisely when you try to keep, to clutch, to force it to remain, God began sending signals. First, a low hum of unease, then small conflicts, and finally a great shattering. Not because He wanted you to suffer, but because without that jolt, you would never awaken. In the architecture of the soul, pain is the catalyst of evolution. It marks the starting point of every rebirth. When we lose what we once thought we couldn't live without, the soul is given the chance to restructure. We begin again, learning from the start how to love, how to trust, how to live. And though it's hard to admit, most human growth does not come from happiness but from suffering. Think of the first time you were betrayed. Your heart felt crushed, your trust collapsed, and you asked, how could they do that? But after you made it through, you were no longer naive. You learned to read actions rather than just words. You learned to set boundaries. You understood that love does not mean blindness. And if you're honest, you'll see that very pain made you deeper, quieter, but clearer. God uses experiences like these to shape the soul, not cruelly, but like a skilled craftsman. He sands down illusions, arrogance, and the false beliefs you unconsciously carried. Every cut of pain is a line etched toward truth. He does not take away your love. He takes away your dependency. He does not remove your kindness. He removes your naivete. He does not strip your gentleness. He strengthens it so it can no longer be exploited. In Jung's depth psychology, this is the nigredo, the stage of dissolution. The soul is drawn into darkness to face what it once denied. It is the time when old structures collapse. Your beliefs, your self-image, even your concept of love. You feel yourself falling into a void where everything that once defined you no longer exists. In this moment, the empath often panics. They try to save, to understand, to cling to something so they don't disintegrate. But the more they resist, the deeper they're pulled. For God's lesson is not in control, but in letting go. That is why many say, I lost everything, but I found myself. Only when you are stripped to the core do you discover what truly remains. And what remains is the soul. There is a line from the theologian Richard Rohr. The human soul only learns through great love or great suffering. For empaths, these two often arrive together in one person. The one they loved the most becomes the one who hurt them the deepest. But it is not meaningless. That very love, though broken, opened a higher level of awareness. If you look closely, you'll see that people who have passed through a relationship with a narcissist are profoundly changed. They no longer trust easily, but they see essence clearly. They speak less, but each word has weight. They don't seek love to be filled, but to journey together. They no longer fear solitude, because they have learned solitude does not kill. It teaches self-love. In truth, God never wanted you to close your heart. He wanted you to learn to love with wisdom, to love without losing yourself, to forgive without allowing the wound to repeat, to be compassionate, yet boundaried. That is matured kindness, love forged in the fire of awareness. Remember those nights when you cried yourself empty, feeling your soul dissolve. Now look back. You're still here. You survived what you once thought you could not endure. And somewhere in that cold wind, you began to trust in something greater than yourself. Not a religion, but the presence of a sacred order where everything happens with purpose. God doesn't need you to be strong right away. He needs you to be honest with yourself. That honesty about fear, wounds, and desire is the gateway to awakening. When you stop pretending that everything is fine, true healing begins. On every path through suffering, there is a point of passage when tears no longer signal despair but surrender. Not surrender to another person, but to truth. You stop resisting what is. Stop trying to explain why they did what they did, and begin to ask, what is the lesson here? In that moment, your soul steps into albedo, the stage of purification. Now, when you look back, you no longer see yourself as a victim, but as someone who has passed the soul's examination. Every tear that once fell had meaning. Every sleepless night was a class held in the dark. And every time you thought you had broken, you were quietly, slowly, but surely turning pain into gold. You've come to understand that healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means remembering without pain. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them return, it means freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. And loving again doesn't mean opening your heart to everyone. It means opening it with discernment, with wisdom, with boundaries. This is a new form of love, one no longer conditioned by fear. It doesn't depend on response, it doesn't crave validation, and it doesn't seek reward. It simply is. When you love without trying to change, save, or prove, that is when your soul has turned to gold. And you know what? That is the ultimate purpose of every trial, to bring the human being back to their divine essence, to light, to love, to awareness. One day, you will encounter the person who once hurt you, maybe in life, maybe only in memory. But this time you won't tremble. Your heart will still beat, but without chaos. You will smile not because you've forgiven them, but because you no longer need them to feel whole. You have completed the cycle of the soul. God never wastes a single pain. Every wound is a piece of the greater mosaic of evolution. And if you look closely, you'll see, where there was once blood and tears, now there is light, the light of one who has walked through fire without losing their soul. You are no longer merely a survivor. You are reborn. You are living proof that darkness can never defeat the light if you are brave enough to walk through it. And that is the sacred alchemy of the soul. When darkness turns to gold, when pain becomes wisdom, when a human being becomes light,